He has risen. He has risen. Is this some kind of joke? Do you take me for some kind of fool? That rabbi from Galilee, Jesus of Nazareth, the man I sentenced to death, who was buried 3 days ago, risen from the dead? It can't be true. The gods are against me. I said the same thing to Claudia when we got the news that Emperor Tiberius, the all-wise, the all-knowing Tiberius, was posting me to be the next prefect of Judea. Judea? Why Judea? Why not Alexandria or Corinth or Ephesus? Anywhere but Judea. The gods have a sick sense of humor. Talk about Greek tragedies. You're looking at a Roman one right now. Pontius Pilate, prefect of Judea. How the gods must hate me. That's the last time I built a temple to Tiberius. I wish I was back down in Caesarea right now instead of up here in Jerusalem. Caesarea. Claudia and I could be eating dinner on the veranda overlooking the Mediterranean Sea as the sun sets. Slaves and soldiers waiting on my every word, watching the ships come and go out of port past the lighthouse. Tonight we could go to the theater, or maybe go to the hippodrome and watch a chariot race. How I wish I was back in Caesarea right now, instead of up here in Jerusalem. Why am I here? Oh yes, to keep the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. Seems like an eternity ago. But it was just 3 days. I was awakened early in the morning by my centurion. He said that the high priest and the Sanhedrin, that's the 71 religious leaders of the Jews, were outside waiting for me. The only thing they all agree on is that they hate me. But the only reason they come to me is because they want me to do their dirty work. They were waiting outside with some infamous traitor they called Jesus, the rabbi from Galilee. They wanted me to condemn him to death. I have to admit, though, I'm really good at taking care of traitors. But why me? Yes, I rule with an iron fist, but you have to. That's the only thing these people will respect. Their allegiance is just to one God. One God. How silly is that? And so I got up and I went out to see them. And here they had before me this man they called Jesus, this traitor. The high priest accused him of claiming to be the king of the Jews, of claiming to be the Messiah, the Son of God. I must admit, a shiver went down my spine as I heard them say that. He said he could rebuild a destroyed temple in 3 days. Yeah. There was something different about this young rabbi. There was, what could I call it? something noble about him. As he stood before me, he didn't stand like most criminals do, begging and pleading. In fact, there was no fear in his eyes. There was peace. I asked him, "Are you the King of the Jews?" He responded, "You have said so." I know what you're thinking. This guy's crazy. I thought the same thing. He's crazy. I'd heard rumors about this Jesus for the last 3 years, about miracles that he had performed that all sounded very suspicious, infamous. But as this man stood before me, I didn't see an infamous criminal. There was no hate in his voice. There was no anger. Can I say that there was love as he stood before me? As I stared into his eyes, I didn't see the infamous, crazy criminal. I saw a man who had a nobility about him. I, the governor of Judea, Pontius Pilate, who held his life in my hands. And yet I couldn't help but thinking, was it my life that he held in his hands too? That's when I decided to set Jesus free. And I was reminded of a tradition which we started years ago, that of at the Passover feast, releasing a criminal of their own choosing. And so I had the idea of setting Jesus free. And so I gave them the choice of a traitor named Barabbas, an insurrectionist and a murderer, or Jesus, the King of the Jews. I was amazed that the people chose Barabbas. And as I was sitting on my judgment seat, I got a message from the residents, from my wife, Claudia. Who does she care who I do and don't crucify? When has she ever meddled in my affairs? The message just said, don't have anything to do with condemning that innocent man. I've suffered much in a dream because of him. Who is this man that he has power even over my wife's dreams? Can you see the position that this puts me in? No matter, I thought, this will all be over soon. I gave the crowd the choice between Barabbas, the murderer, and Jesus. And to my astonishment, they all yelled, "Crucify him! Crucify him! Give us Barabbas!" It was like this Jesus was destined to die. And so I sent Jesus for flogging, thinking that this might pacify the crowd. I'll say something about my soldiers. They're really good at what they do. How they beat him. Why, you ask? Well, they hate Judea as much as I do. They don't enjoy being posted here any more than I do. And when Jesus came back, he was a bloody mess, unrecognizable, with a crown of thorns on his head. I thought that this might pacify the crowd, but the moment they saw him, they began to cry out, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" "If you let him go, you're no friend of Caesar," they said. I said, "Why? What crime has he committed?" And all the louder, they continued to cry out, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" I had no choice. I called for a basin and I washed my hands. I said, "I am innocent of this man's blood. What could I do? It was my job to keep the peace." Sometimes the only way to peace is with the cross. I sent my best centurion on that crucifixion detail. 2 other criminals were sent along with Jesus to be crucified toward Golgotha mountain. I myself inscribed a post to be put on the head of the cross on which Jesus died. "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews." Part of me wrote it because, well, I just wanted to get back at the religious leaders. I knew it was out of jealousy that they had handed him over to me. But there was part of me that wondered, is it really true what they say about Jesus? Deep down, he had said that my kingdom is not of this world. I wondered, was he inviting me to be a part of that kingdom too? About noon on that day, as Jesus hung on the cross, some strange things began to happen, which I must admit had all of us shaking in our armor. At noon, until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the gods turned out the lights, and it was dark all throughout Judea as Jesus hung on the cross. There was a violent earthquake, and I heard that the temple, the veil in the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. This is all coincidence, right? After that, I heard that Jesus cried out, "It is finished," and died. What did he mean by that? It is finished. My centurion, who's crucified thousands of men, criminals all, proclaimed about this Jesus of Nazareth. Surely this man was the Son of God. Why did he say that? I was shocked when one of the Sanhedrin, those who had condemned Jesus to death, Joseph of Arimathea, boldly came into my court and begged for the body of Jesus to be given to him. I asked him why, and he said it was to give the rabbi a proper burial. I was shocked to hear that he was dead. And so I questioned my centurion. I don't know why I cared what happened to the body of that young rabbi. But there was a part of me that was pleased that this innocent man was getting a proper burial. I hear that there was another member of the Sanhedrin, Nicodemus, who came along and buried Jesus with Joseph. I had intended just to throw the bodies to the buzzards. After all, it's a great object lesson, isn't it? Nobody messes with Rome, and nobody messes with the prefect of Judea. When will they learn that? I thought it was all over with. I thought to myself that this unpleasantness was all through. But the next day, it was a special Sabbath. I thought it was going to be a day of rest in the residence with Claudia. And then the high priest was outside waiting for me. I said, "What now? What do you want now? We already crucified the Messiah, as you say." He stammered and stuttered, and then he said, "We remember that when the rabbi was with us, he said, 'I will rise again in 3 days.'" I must admit, a shiver went down my spine. And I thought, who is he? Who is this Jesus that even death cannot keep hold of him? I thought this unpleasantness was all over with. But maybe it was just beginning. This morning, early, I was awakened by another earthquake. And my soldiers on guard on the wall said that they saw something that appeared like lightning and flashed in the distance, in the direction of Golgotha and the tomb where Jesus was buried. Not long after, I heard that my soldiers snuck back into the city and went to the high priest. I quickly sent my centurion to see what was going on, to make sure that everything was as it should be. No one would dare mess with Rome, not those cowardly disciples of his. His report says that he found the seal on the tomb broken, and the stone was rolled away, and the body was gone. Some women had been to the tomb before my centurion, and as they fled away from the tomb, my centurion heard them asking each other what "he has risen" means. What's going on here? I've lost control of my province. Emperor Tiberius is surely going to have my head. When I asked my centurion what all this meant, I asked him, was the tomb really empty? And he got this strange look on his face. And he said, "Well, not exactly." I said, "What, not exactly? What does that mean?" He said, I said, "Did the disciples overpower my soldiers and go into the tomb and unwrap Jesus while my soldiers patiently waited outside, a bunch of fishermen?" defeated my soldiers? Not exactly. Well, what was in the tomb? The burial wrapping around Jesus was left. The disciples left the wrapping in the tomb? I asked. He said, not exactly. I said, what do you mean? And he said, the wrapping around Jesus was lying there. And it was as if, like a butterfly coming out of a cocoon, the body was just gone. What's more, the wrapping that was around the face, the expensive linen that should have been inside the wrapping, was outside of the wrapping, lying folded in a separate place. I said, inconceivable! All while my soldiers waited outside the tomb. It's not possible. How could this be? How could this be that the King of the Jews, Jesus, did he really rise from the dead? What is truth? He is risen. Is my centurion right? Did I crucify not only the King of the Jews, but the Son of God? I admit there's an emptiness inside of my heart that serving the Emperor Tiberius has not been able to fill. What I wouldn't give for a moment of peace, peace that hasn't been bought with a sword or a cross. The kind of peace that I saw in the eyes of Jesus of Nazareth. Pax Romana, Roman peace. Oh, how I wish it were true. Oh, how I wish that I didn't need a ghastly cross to bring that about. He said his kingdom was not of this world. I wonder, would he welcome me? Would he welcome me into that kingdom? When I spoke to him, it was as if he could see right through my royal robes, deep down into my heart, and my heart burned within me. There was love in his voice. It was as if Jesus took my place on that cross. What is truth? He has risen.